Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Directions Mag geospatial webinar today, co-hosted by Directions and our good friends over at the Esri Education Team. I am Barbara Duke, Managing Editor here at Directions Magazine, joined by our Assistant Webinar Producer, Lynette Qualia. If you have any questions about your connection, just drop us a note in the chat. We'll do our best to help you. We encourage you to stop by directionsmag.com and read our feature articles, daily news, and of course, watch more webinars. Lots of free things over there at directionsmag.com. We're standing by to take your questions throughout the session. You can type those in at any time. We're going to do our best to get to as many questions as we can at the end of the session. But whatever we don't get to, the Esri team will follow up with you individually. And if you see something that you like on the screen, just click that little camera button. We will be in touch within a day or so with an email that includes links shared, the recording, and an attendance certificate. We also appreciate your thoughts on the survey and the polls that come throughout the evening. So with that, we would like to welcome our good, talented friends over at the Esri Education Team. Welcome back this evening to Tom, Charlie, and Kylie. They have a great lineup of tools, resources, and tips to share with you to get GIS into your classroom. Lots of things that are time-tested and really easy to use. So Charlie, get us started.
Thanks very much, Barbara, and thanks, Lynette, and hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. And what we want to do is to walk through some of the basics. We took a look at the registrations and understand that a number of you are interested in the basics. Some of you are really interested in doing some really wild and wonderful things with GIS. We're going to really focus on the basics for people who are going back to school. And many people said, you know, I'm starting right out. I don't know anything about this. So this is actually kind of helpful. We run into this question all the time. Hey, I want to use Esri. And well, so Esri is the company. That's the group that we work for. GIS is the technology, the generic name of Geographic Information Systems. We make a platform of software, GIS software, and our particular brand is called Arcgis. So you're going to hear Arcgis frequently this evening. Lots of people use these tools in all kinds of different industries. And you'll see even education is there. So yes, indeed, we make GIS tools that people can use in higher ed and in schools. And if you wanted to see the Esri schools page, you can find that at esri.com/schools. What are we doing with GIS for schools? Well, just like we do for other folks. GIS helps people understand the world and through that, be able to make good decisions and solve problems. And they do that thinking spatially with these tools powered by the horses in the computer. They're really expanding what it is that we can do. Now, schools are special, and the software, the data, the learning resources, those are all free for K-12 instructional use for schools and clubs all around the world. We want people to learn why and how to use these tools because we like people to make good decisions, to do it from a place of understanding, to get a holistic vision on things and be able to see how they can do things better. And as I mentioned, we're going to be focusing on ArcGIS. That's the platform. Arcgis Online, that's the core of the technology. The arcgis.com website that you see, that's the address to get to ArcGIS Online. Now, there's all kinds of stuff that you're going to see that you can do without being logged in. We like people to go in and explore. So there's a lot that you can do without a login, but there's a whole bunch more that you can do with a login. And so we're going to be steering in that direction, starting out without a login and then getting into stuff that you can do with a login. And because this is all online, Windows, Macintosh computers, Chromebooks, your Android tablets, even your iOS smartphone, computers, laptops, tablets, smartphones, all of these things work to access ArcGIS Online. Now, of course, if you're working with things on a smartphone, you don't have quite as much space, so it's a little bit tougher. More space is always better, but you can open up a lot even just on a phone and look at it. The whole notion is any device, anytime, anywhere you're connected. And we'll talk a little bit more about this towards the end, but really the whole notion of getting people working with ArcGIS Online is to practice, doing things a lot. It's this frequency of experiences that makes the difference between students and teachers, particularly, who know how to do the basics, the fundamentals, the cool things, and they know why to go exploring, why to engage this tool and that tool. So it's this whole get engaged with it, explore, and be excited about it. Now, a lot of you are coming from a number of different situations, and we want to explore that. So, Barbara, I think we've got a poll that is ready to rock and roll here. So can we do that poll? All right. Why are you interested in this webinar? Select one or more, any number.
All right, let's see what they say, Charlie.
Wow, look at that. School-age kids, more than 2 out of 3 of you. That's outstanding. So, Kylie, I think they're ready for you. Let's shift it.
All right. So what I want to do right now is to take a minute and give you an idea what this is all about and what Charlie's talking about, right? Because these tools are great. So there's the software and it's available for K-12 education use for free. And there's all these tools. And he mentioned there's things you can do without signing in. Well, let's just look at what he's talking about. So the foundation of the bundle and the software available to schools is ArcGIS Online, this website that you're looking at right now. And you can see right now I'm not signed in. And you'll notice I'm going to stay that way most of the time that I'm showing you things. For things that are different, I will let you know so that you understand where those places are. But first, let's just jump in. Now, we are talking about GIS, which is mapping on computers. And so I want to go ahead and jump right into the map. And maps are becoming a lot more common on computers. Like think about Google Maps or Apple Maps, right? Ultimately, how you're going to interact here is very similar to in those places. Like in those, you can move the map around and pan. You can zoom in, you can zoom out. You can search for places of interest, like where Esri is based. All right, and similar also to these other mapping platforms, you see right now some street data, and you can change what that looks like. Perhaps you want to see imagery instead. You can choose that option. Now, you might have noticed when I did that, there's a few more choices than you're used to seeing. There's quite a number of different backgrounds. Perhaps you'd like your map to look like those made for National Geographic. Well, we can do that. And let's go ahead and change it to one of my personal favorites, the light gray canvas. Okay, that you might say isn't quite as interesting. It's a little bit washed out. There's not quite as much there, yet it's one of my favorite base maps. And the reason why is that one of the things special about ArcGIS is that you can add other data to the map. And this base map I like because it helps let that data really shine and stand out. Now to add my own data to the map, I don't need to sign in, but I do need to click up here in the corner where it says Modify Map. I'm going to go ahead and start modifying this map. You'll see I now have this Add button, and I can go ahead and browse for some data that I want to add. I'm going to choose the Living Atlas because it has quite a number of layers that are popular and that are curated by Esri and partners and others who submit data. So I'm going to go ahead and look for some population variable data. And when I find a data set that looks good, I can click on it and get some additional information. Now, the reason I want you to pay a little bit of attention here is it's helpful in knowing if this data is right for the purposes you're going to use it and the ways that you want to use it. And it's also something to keep in mind once you start creating your own data. We're going to go ahead and add that onto the map here. And we're going to close some of these windows. And great, we've got a purpley blobby map. Okay, well, what does it mean? What do the colors mean? What is this all about? Well, we're going to go ahead and jump to the details of what we have here, and we can see a legend. So just like on a paper map, there's a legend that explains what we're looking at. And in this case, what we're looking at is the darker colors are areas with a higher percentage of the population in a dependent age group, whether that's older or younger ages. Okay, cool. Well, if I zoom out here, my data changes. Instead of looking at tract level data, now I'm looking at counties. So here's another cool thing about maps on computers, right? They're interactive, and I can actually change what I'm seeing here. And I can click and learn more about this area and find out the exact percentages instead of just the colors that give us a clue to it. Now, if I want to learn even more about this data, I may want to see just the raw data, and I can do that too. I can go into the content, and I can tell which data we're looking at right now because it's the one that's not grayed out, right? Because I talked about you saw tracks based on where we're zoomed. So we're going to go ahead and look at this county data, which is what's showing on our map now. And we can actually just view the whole table of that data. Well, as you're looking at this, you'll notice there's a few more variables in here than just the one I'm looking at. So this data set has a lot more in it, but what's being highlighted by the colors was chosen by someone else. Now you could come in and change those colors and make it look a little bit differently. And that may be what you want to do. Now, perhaps I've done a bunch here and I don't really know where I am or what I'm doing. I am okay to just play in this space and not worry about that because all I need to do to get back to exactly how I started is to reload the page. And when I do that, you'll see not only am I back looking at the same extent and base map, it doesn't have the editing or the adding data tools available, and it's back to that experience I was first looking at. All right, now you notice that gray map that I was using, I said was one of my favorites, and the reason was letting my data shine. Well, the map I then showed you wasn't a great example of that because that data was covering most of that gray base map. So what I'm gonna do now is switch to a different tab with a different map in it. Now we're looking at some point data on that base map, and this is actually colors that people submitted as their favorite color. Now, I made this map earlier today without logging in. This color data is another layer that I can find while I'm not logged in and add to my map. And right now you can see it still says sign in. I'm still not logged into this website, and I'm able to view this map and interact with it, and I can click on a color and see information about it. Yet in this case, it is a map I have saved, just because I didn't want you to have to watch me make it again. So in saving this map, I did need to be logged in. All right, so the reason this gray base map, again, is nice is because it is subtle. And I don't care exactly where these points are. What I was interested in with these favorite colors is relationships between the data and comparing them to each other. And this is actually a data set that my kids and I collected this summer. And later in this webinar, we will look at how the data set was made and how you can do similar projects. So one last note before I move on from this map viewing experience is to be ready to play, as I said, and you can always refresh and get back to how you started. And to make sure that you let students and your children just jump in. Kids have a tendency to just jump in and get it. That's okay. Encourage it, learn from them. Let them lead you a bit in the tech. A lot of this technology is second nature to our children in ways that it just isn't to us. One strategy that we've seen some teachers use is to encourage children to ask a partner in the class before going to the teacher for how to do something, because chances are the student next to them has already figured out how. All right, so that was a basic map that we looked at. The next thing I want to look at is a couple apps that really help bring GIS into classrooms. The first is a pretty basic app here. It's a globe. Just like on our flat map, it's interactive. I can pan around, I can zoom in, I can explore. And also, just like before, I'm able to change what it looks like. We can again make it look like that National Geographic map. And since it's a globe, I can zoom in and I can change even the angle. Say I want to maybe explore how things look at different views, and I can play. All right. Well, another thing I can do is go on out to the globe level, and kids can do this as well, is play with what it looks like at different times of day. So let's go ahead and jump to today's date. Well, right now, I can see that at different times of day, sorry, wrong button there, I can see by sliding what the shadows on the earth will look like at those times. And interesting, let's go jump back a few months. Let's look at January 1st. As we zoom, look at that. So that point in the year, looks like Santa has dark all day. What if we jump to the middle of summer? Let's jump into middle, let's go forward a bit. Okay, a lot less dark up there for him. All right, so it's something the kids can come in and explore some data. A few other things to understand on this. Charlie mentioned before, any device, and the same is true here. This can be used on a phone, on a tablet, on a computer, on a Chromebook, any of those places. And just like before, if you refresh, it'll reset you to how you started. Another one I want to look at quickly here is actually something my kids and I put together at the end of last year, taking a book that was really just perfect for this kind of example, because it was a book about the journey of this wooden man across the US. So there's obviously a mapping component to that story. And what we did is we extracted the idea of that map and we brought it in here. And then we told the story through this map and this website. And you can see there's a bit of the story and some pictures from the book. And these are pieces of information that we added to this map. So it was a pretty simple interface to create this map, and you just clicked where you wanted to put something and the content you wanted to show there. And as you scroll, you can see we tell pretty much the whole story, but it's a little different because we decided to tell it from the wooden man's point of view. And you can see the use of some maps kind of as details. And as we scroll through, you'll see other places where the map is the focus. And again, these are interactive maps. So you could come in and learn more by looking at the different places. You could even zoom in on those locations to play with that map. All right, and the last one, before I go to the last one actually, this is called a story map, this combination of text and pictures and maps all kind of together. And it's a great thing for kids to explore and play with. And the great news is there are many available that you can go in, read and explore, or students can use them to learn from. Any topic I'm interested in, I could probably search and find something I might want to read, whether it's about climate, like the endangered climate, history of pride, off the bench, we've got some sports stories in here, right? So there's quite a variety. And these are resources that you can open and use as a way to learn that are going to bring some maps in and communicate some content. And again, the only thing I've done so far signed in was saving that one map that you didn't even have to see me do. All of this other stuff, adding data to the map, exploring it, that's all available for you, even without an account. So now that we've looked at some of that stuff, I'm going to actually take it from resources that are available for you to learn and explore with. And I'm going to turn it over to Tom, who's going to do some more resources that are focused more on classroom instruction.
And I think that's working for us. So Kylie just showed us 3 different types of GIS tools. The first one, that 2-dimensional map, the 2D map, where she was looking at population data in purple, 2D map, sometimes we call it the map viewer. And the other tools are extremely cool and powerful, but the map viewer is for a lot of educators and a lot of parents working with kids, either at home or in formal settings. That 2-dimensional map viewer is sort of bread and butter. It provides a lot of core data visualization, pattern seeking, and discovery that we can do with kids and young learners of really any age. Geo Inquiries is a set of pre-built content that leverages that same map viewer. So that same tool that Kylie was first demonstrating is the same tool that underpins this entire section that we're talking about on Geo Inquiries. So Geo Inquiries are pre-built content. The nice thing about this is that means the instructional materials have been set up for you, the data has been created, and the maps have been created. Now, if you're brand new to thinking about working with interactive maps in classroom settings or informal settings, sometimes data can be difficult to find depending on what you like to map. So to help people take their first step or two into this world of GIS, we created geo-inquiries. So geo-inquiries are really tools designed for teachers and informal educators and parents that are really very new to working with this type of technology. So what you should be seeing on screen now is sort of my honeycomb of geo-inquiries. And it's really a densely packed slide, but it's necessary as an overview to get you familiar with some of the possibilities here. So geo-inquiries, there are 10 different collections, and you can tell by the graphic on the right that they are organized by subject area. So it's US history, American Lit, mathematics, government, an elementary education package, earth science. There's a world geography, world history, environmental science. You know, we really cover the gamut here, and of course I missed human geography. We cover the gamut here in social studies and science, particularly at the middle school and high school levels. These materials are standards aligned, so they're aligned to national curriculum standards. It makes it very easy to snap into existing curricula. They also happen to be tied or linked to the most common textbooks out on the markets today. So for example, if you're using the Americas US history book, you will notice that there are places where we provide our maps in places where that textbook has provided, say, a full-page map of some phenomena. Except in this case, you can actually interact with the map as Kylie was demonstrating. Your students can interact with the map. The data are no longer, they become alive, for lack of a better description, when they're inside of these interactive maps. 10 collections. Each collection has at least 15 activities. Each activity takes roughly 15 minutes. That's if you stick to the script. For the level 1 activities, there is no login, there's no installation. You don't even have to request a license. So it's very much in the spirit of what Kylie was just demonstrating, where there's this all this cool stuff you can do without ever actually logging in. Level 1 geo-inquiries are the same thing. Pre-built content and data, no logins. These geo-inquiries we started in 2014. They were created by teachers, for teachers from the outset. Over the last 5-6 years, we have continued to refine them based on teacher feedback, and we do curate this content, not only the instructional material, but also the data. So whenever possible, for example, we add the latest 2020 data to an activity so that the material is always fresh, it's always current, and that's probably something that a textbook you're using isn't going to tell you. These are, of course, content forward. By that, what I mean is we're not trying to help you create little GIS professionals here. We're trying to help you teach the content that you already need to teach by using some very powerful interactive mapping tools. And of course, as Charlie mentioned earlier, this content, geo-inquiries in particular, are capable of running on any device, anywhere, anytime, as long as they're connected. So we'll take a quick look at what I call the anatomy of a teacher geo-inquiry, or the teacher PDF. It's a 2-page document. At the top left, page 1, you'll notice my header. It provides the activity name, the target group, as well as the time. Now, we have almost 185 geo-inquiries in our collections. They are all laid out in the same way that this one page is laid out. So once you've used one, you know the structure and form of not just other activities in the Earth Science collection, but any other collection that you might want to pull from. So as you move down the page, you'll notice we list out those national standards and learning outcomes. And then we continue, you'll see this blue bar here, and there's a URL in it which may not quite be visible. That's okay. But on every geo-inquiry, that's where you'll find the interactive map link. As you continue to move down the page, you'll notice there are 5 chunks of text. These are the 5 stages of inquiry that the educators can use to guide the students through the map exploration. For science-based activities, we use a very common inquiry model called the 5E model. It's from BSCS. For the social studies materials, we tend to use the geographic inquiry cycle. They're both 5-stage inquiry models. They're both quite intuitive once you've done a couple. We continue to move through the activity. We're on the middle of page 2 now. You'll notice there's 2 technical tooltip boxes. In this case, one tells you about how to use a measurement tool. The other tells you how to use the bookmarks. These technical tooltips will vary from activity to activity depending on the nature of the work. Beneath that, you'll see some extensions for taking the activity further, and you'll also see those textbook linkages. And finally, you'll notice at the very bottom, you'll see our Creative Commons license. So rest assured, as educators, you can freely modify these activities as you wish for your own classroom use. So this is the map that goes with that activity. Now, unlike Kylie, I just took screenshots of a few instances of the map. In this activity, this 15-minute cracked plates activity for earth science classrooms, it basically asks the students to examine global patterns in earthquakes and make statements of observation about how those earthquake patterns correspond to plate boundaries. This is something that, particularly for those of us in GIS, we see routinely. It's earthquakes, it's volcanoes, it's plate tectonics. Part of that is because this tool can be so powerful at demonstrating that particular concept. In this geo-inquiry, we take that data, the earthquakes, the boundaries, we can begin to add really interesting stuff like relative and absolute plate motion. And then we can begin to re-examine what that might mean for particular regions of our planet in terms of the earthquakes and how they relate to the type of plate boundary that they're associated with. How does an earthquake differ between 2 different types of boundaries? So again, that's a 15-minute activity, and it's based around content that's already in the textbook, but can be very difficult to describe to students an abstract concept like this when they really have very few ways to manipulate data or something physical to help demonstrate that concept. So when we think about geo-inquiries, we are in such weird times right now, particularly for education. It needs to be said that these things are actually very flexible. The base case was written for a teacher standing in front of a classroom with a projector on and verbally delivering that activity, while either the interactive map is up on the whiteboard or perhaps the students were loading that map up on their tablet or their device. Those still hold true today, of course, but educators are also now doing it online through things like Zoom. The educator is verbally delivering the activity, displaying the map in their own Zoom window, and asking the students to provide feedback based on the questions and the activities. Alternatively, we also know teachers are still delivering it verbally, yet having their students load the map up on the students' devices directly, giving the students the ability to manipulate the map. For the first time you try to do one of these, I would certainly suggest getting the students' hands on the maps as soon as possible. As you might imagine, these activities can also work well in flipped classrooms, which if you skip down to the 4th bullet, makes a lot of sense. There are now handouts available for every geo-inquiry. We were reluctant to build them, we finally did, and they are routinely used now, probably more so than the PDFs, to support homework, give the kid a worksheet, the map URL is on it, and they can go fill out the questions or typical seat work. And of course, differentiation is entirely possible with this content. If you're delivering the activity verbally, one can easily step up or down the language and content needed by the age appropriateness of the audience, or if need be, most of these activities can also be truncated quite easily in order to shorten the overall length of the activity without compromising too much of the integrity of the content. So there's certainly ways with GeoInquiries and its associated set of resources to really make this content flexible. And we've been talking about level 1 GeoInquiries. No login, no installations, you don't need anything. You just go to the website, pick the PDF you want, and teach it tomorrow. Level 2 is a little different. Of the 10 collections, 6 collections have a handful of level 2 activities associated. So for example, on screen, government, the Earth Science Collection, the US History Collection, the World History Collection, Human Geography, and one other also has level 2 content. Cool thing about level 2 is you actually use the analysis tools inside of Arcgis Online to analyze the data. That does mean that you have to have a login to Arcgis Online. In fact, you actually have to have an account with publisher level permissions. So these things are all free for K-12 classroom instruction and club instruction. Charlie's going to go into this a bit later, but so don't think of this as a red flag, but it is something in terms of planning that if you're considering doing level 2 content, make sure you do have your school account set up and ready, okay? On level 2 GeoInquiries, 3 things to note on the page itself. This will help you identify a level 1 versus a level 2. Firstly, there's a big 2 in the banner. So there's a big 2 up by the icon. Secondly, in the top portion of that first page, you'll notice that there is this GeoInquiries requirements, level 2 GeoInquiry requirements. And one thing to note about level 2, when you do an analysis or when you use an analysis tool, you will consume, or your students will consume, a tiny amount of credits if you follow the activity as it's listed. We recommend when you're using the analysis tools, simply do a pre-check on the credit consumption, which is in the directions, before you actually execute the script. Now, credits are something that come with your Arcgis Online organization. They're nothing to necessarily worry about, and I think, again, we'll mention it a bit more later. The third element for level 2 activities to be aware of is that there is actually an analysis section in the activity, and we denote that with these little blue circles with white numbering in them. So if you see those 3 cues, you know you're dealing with a level 2 activity, which requires that login, publisher level permissions. Something else I wanted to bring your attention to is that at this point, there are a handful of states that have created state-specific GeoInquiries. These are GeoInquiries usually tailored directly to state history or state geography curricula, and they are done to really drill into a piece of content or a specific idea that is unique to that state. So it's not an idea that, okay, we're going to investigate, rain in Kansas, and then the states are simply cutting that same idea into Missouri and Nebraska and Iowa. It's not that. Excuse me. These are actually unique concepts to each state. So if you end up in one of these states, Texas, Virginia, West Virginia, Michigan, Minnesota, or Georgia, take a look at the URL on this page. It's not one of the URLs that Barbary is probably putting in the chat. It will take you directly to the landing page for the state collections, and you can investigate further if you're in or around those states. Lastly, just a few other quick tips. There is a forum inside of the Esri community. It's an online community for GIS and education users and everybody really in the GIS family. But we have a specific little spot for GeoInquiry users, and you'll find discussions and resources and things of that sort. For example, one of the more recent discussions was actually how the GeoInquiries are being adapted to some of the new map viewer tools. You'll also find links about how to customize GeoInquiries, and of course content updates. Now, if you're listening to this and thinking, gosh, this is really, there's a lot here to absorb, and you're right, there is. I want you to also realize that there's a number of resources out there to help you that have already been built, and Mapping Hour is one of these. Charlie's going to talk more about mapping in a few minutes, but be aware that in episodes 2 and 3, there's quite a discussion about geo inquiries and how best to utilize them, particularly in today's instructional settings in classrooms. Last but not least, see the story map, the geo inquiry story map. It's at esriurl.com/geoinquiry story map. The story map is going to walk you through almost everything. Well, it will walk you through everything we covered here in the last 15 minutes, and actually quite a bit more, so that you can be successful using geo inquiries as one of your first steps. Kylie, I think I'll hand it back over to you now.
All right, so Tom has taken us through the geo inquiries, and this is great, rich content that you can bring right into your classroom and use. Now, maybe you've done some geo inquiries. Maybe your kids have their own ideas that they want to get mapped, or maybe you have a project you'd like your kids to take on that has a mapping component. And I also mentioned in my first section, right, that I'd talk a little bit about how you can get your own data into a map. So let's first look at a project that I did earlier this summer. So this is on mapping favorite color. And it's really, I want you to pay attention to how simple this data collection project was. Here's our questions. What is your favorite color? And where are you? That's it. That was our whole project, okay? So as we scroll down, you can see the results of people who have answered this survey. Well, we should be able to. Let's go ahead and we'll give it a refresh. Let's see if it'll come in. There we go, that's looking a bit better. And you may remember this map from earlier with my gray base map, right? It's that same data about favorite colors. So here is how it was entered. People came to this website, filled out the survey, and got on the map. Now, the story map, which is what this is, goes on to do a bit more. It shows kind of the power of GIS, showing the relationship between how many blue is there, how many greens are there, and looking at the different breakdowns of this data, and as well as processing it a bit. What can we do with it? So the key here I want to talk to you about is just what I did. How do I make one? What if you want to do a project similar to this? What would you need to do? So I'm going to jump over here to an app. This is called Arcgis Survey123. This is part of your school bundle and something you will get, but you'll notice I am now signed in. So the things right now are things that you do need to sign in to do when you're creating a survey. And I'm going to show you how we would do that. And so in this case, well, Charlie was actually telling me earlier today, he wished he could see with those favorite colors how old the people were, because I mentioned that I was finding a lot of my kids' friends were picking, you know, the purples and the blues and a lot of pink, and that we weren't seeing that when adults were filling it out. But I only knew that by talking to people who'd filled it out. So in order to really see it, we would have needed to include another question, which would have been about age. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new survey here. And we'll go ahead and create it. So while that's going, let me tell you a little bit about Survey123. So what Survey123 is, well, think of it kind of like Google Forms with a map. So you can see it's an interface that you can design your own surveys in. And just like in other places, you drag and drop the types of questions you want. Now, one of the things I really think is important, especially when using these in education, to talk a lot about is about survey design. Right? You really need to pay attention to what is the big problem you're trying to solve? What's your overarching question? And then what are the little questions that are going to give you the data you need to answer your big question? Okay, and along with what are those questions, what kind of answer do you want? Okay, so let me explain that a little bit. Let's go ahead and put some text on here, and maybe we'll ask their name or nickname. Okay, and that makes sense as text, right? And let's add another text, and for here we can put color. So this is problematic, right? Because for color, I could now type red, I could type I like red, I could type red is my favorite, I could type fire engine red. Now when I'm analyzing that, I may want all of those to really just be red. So I don't want to give someone a string. I want to be designing my survey to encourage people to give me the answers I want. So in this case, instead, I'm going to make it a single choice and ask their favorite color here. And then I can go ahead and type in the choices. And if I need additional, I can go ahead and do that. And I'm going to save you watching me type all of them. We'll just go with 4 for now. And then remember, the question Charlie was asking me is, what is the impact of age on people's favorite color? Well, with the survey I have here, I can't really answer his question. I need to make sure I've added another question that would give me that information when I'm looking at this. Now, if we think about what we did a moment ago, we could use a string for age, and someone could type in 7 years old, 42 years old, 4 decades, right? We could get quite that variety. Or thinking again about how do we constrain people to give us the information that we want, let's use a number. Okay, so we can add that into our form. Great. Now, I want to take it a little bit farther because I have young children who love to say they are 5.5. But for this, I really just want an integer. And so I'm going to go ahead and check this box, and that will require people to actually enter integers. Now, while we're here, there's another thing I can do that's pretty powerful, which is marking this as a required question. A required question means that the person filling out the survey can't click submit until they've answered that question. So you could put that on every question, but if someone doesn't want to tell you their name, do you still want to know their favorite color and age? Well, maybe. So think about what questions you really need answers. I think about this as, what questions do I not want them to bother answering at all if they're not going to answer those questions? And in this case, I really care about color and age. So I want to make sure they have to answer those two. Now, one of the things we were looking at in the favorite color was how that is distributed over the globe. And this is GIS, so we do want to include a map so that people can include their location. And often that's going to be required when you're working with Survey123. Now you'll notice it put the map up here, and I may want it lower. I can just drag and drop it. Nice and simple interface there, fairly intuitive to use. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and save it, and I'm going to publish it. What publishing does is it makes it available to people to fill it out. Now, there's a catch though. When I create something, by default, it's only available to me. So while I am publishing it, only I will be able to fill it out. And that may not be what I want. In this case, it's really not. It's open participatory GIS. I would love everyone to answer my survey. So I definitely want to make sure that I've shared it with people so that I can get that wider range of answers. Now to share it, I'm going to come into the Collaborate tab and choose who can fill it out. In this case, it's pretty simple. If I want everyone to fill it out, who can submit to this survey? Well, everyone. Great. And in this case, let's only let them add their favorite color. I can go ahead and save my changes. And now anyone is going to be able to fill it out. They can use the link shown at the top, hidden by the box right now. There we go. They can use this link shown at the top. You could use the QR code and share it to them. Or as the author, I can just click this button and start filling it out right now. So in here, I can fill out my survey, pick my favorite color, and I find it always useful to go with 27 for age, for place. Now, this gets a little bit tricky. Where are you? That can be personally identifying information, or PII, and I may not want to give my exact address. I could use this button that is actually going to locate me on the map. Well, I don't want you to know that well. And for this project, you don't need to know that well. The city I'm in is fine. So I'm just going to go ahead and type my city name and use that as the location of my dot. Filled out, I can go ahead and submit, and the data goes away. Well, how do I see it? Okay, you have a couple choices here. You can do something like what we've done in the first part I talked to you guys, right? Where we made a map and we put our favorite color data on it. It's a pile of data that we can just drop into any map. We could do something like you saw here in the story map, right? We could do the same exact thing, but embedding our new story, creating a new map for it, maybe making a new dashboard here, which shows all the charts, and incorporating age into those questions. Well, I can also just stay here in the Survey123 app, and I can go to the data tab. And I can see here, oh, look, one person has answered. It was Kylie, and she likes green. Great. And I can go to the Analyze tab, which is going to be a little bit in between the data and the full dashboard. So this is Survey123's attempt at what you may want to see about these things. You can see it is using a chart here to show how many people liked each color. Now, these charts are a little bit boring right now because I'm the only person who's answered it. Just imagine as this data gets populated, you'll get more and more in here to play with, to explore, and that data will all be data you can place onto the map. Okay, so take home here. You can make a data collection project using the school bundle tools and, of course, your connected device. Now, there is a disconnected story, especially in data collection. It's not that rare to not have an internet connection, and we have resources that can help you with that if it is something you want to explore. But in this case, really, your school bundle, your device, make your survey, and you can collect your data, and that data is easy to plug right into your map. Well, how might you use this? Well, right now, I actually was working with a teacher earlier this week who is starting school right now, and she decided to use a survey so that all of the kids could introduce themselves to the class. So she sent out a link and everyone filled it out and they got to create a map and they based it off of the middle schools they were all coming from. It was a first-year high school class. So you can use it to introduce. We also saw another teacher this year create a scavenger hunt for a club he was doing. So he had titles of what you needed to find outside, take a picture and add it to the map. Another great use. And really, it's pretty unlimited. Anytime you could create a survey, whether it's a Google form, SurveyMonkey, something like that, but you'd like to bring a map into it, this is a great tool to use. And then your data will be ready right in ArcGIS, ready to be added to any of your maps, and then available to all the analysis tools that we haven't even had time to get into today. All right, I'm gonna go ahead now and turn it back over to Charlie.
Thanks, Kylie. That was great. Now, one of the things that people have been asking about, especially recently, is, wow, there's a lot of challenges in a lot of places, and this is true. You really need to be thinking about who's got access to devices, especially when you're not at school. Who's got access to connectivity? For those things, it really helps to have leaders in the community who understand data about multiple factors that vary between places. So to solve the problem, they really need to have these geographic understandings. You also need to have educators who can help students get access to the right resources and use them effectively. So there are a lot of ways in which equity is going to vary from one part of the community to another, and that's a big challenge. A lot of people have been talking about racial equity, and Esri has put a bunch of resources up online for you to go in and take a look at. Esri.com/racial-equity. That's a thing for you to go ahead and take a look at in the coming days. Now, we've talked about a lot of stuff this evening, and you may have been looking at this and saying, geez, how do I find out about everything? And both Tom and Kylie mentioned mapping hour. What the heck is mapping hour? When the pandemic hit and people were closing schools, we said we need to create a bunch of video resources. And so there are 20 hour-long episodes about how to use the tools. And all of the things that you saw this evening are described in rich detail in these movies. There's a whole bunch more. They're designed for teachers and parents, beginner, not even logged in, for the first 3 episodes, and then working your way through on up to advanced project work. It's how do I work with my Arcgis Online account, and how do I work with these other tools? It's a great resource. Go take a look at it. How do I know about all these other things? There's a document, and this is a very important document, esriurl.com/getting started for educators. We've even attached it as a handout in the panel, and this is an item that you can grab from your GoToWebinar panel where it says handouts, and you can pull this down and download it, or you can email it to somebody or send them the link. These are in part 1, everything from how do I spell GIS all the way down to part 4, what do I need for lifelong learning as an educator? The big parts for you guys as an audience are parts 2 and 3. This is how do I go about teaching with ArcGIS Online, and how do I learn more? And there, 8 and 9, you can see the geo inquiries, story map and the geo inquiries activities, and number 10, the mapping hour. So this is a set of links that is going to walk you through from a little bit to a little bit more to a little bit more, all the way through. When you say, geez, I'm a school, we need to get our own set of software, that's link number 14. But it may help to have you take a look at link number 13, the Arcgis Online Orgs for Schools. This is a document that will give you guidance about setting up your org and really talk about privacy and single sign-on. This has got the questions that you need to address and how do you go about setting up accounts. This is going to be essentially the construction of your org Bible for people in a school or a club setting. But where do I find that? Okay, esri.com/schools. You'll see up at the top, there's the little pull down by schools, or you see the same tabs in the little black bar there, and I see Schools Mapping Software Bundle. I click it, it opens up the next page that is the bottom half that you see here, and down below, just where it rolls off the screen, is a form to fill out. And on that form, you can see even on this one, see if your school already has a license, the little blue text above the little boxes. And this will take you to this map that you can see the schools, the sites in the country that already have access to it. We want you to see what's available. We want you to explore this, but not everybody wants to work with a school bundle. Some people say, you know, we're just a little temporary pod, or we're a little short-term club that's just going to be working for the springtime. We've got a club kit, esriearl.com/GIS Club Kit. This is for the less formal K-12 instruction. Homeschools are good. These temporary pods that people are setting up, short-term clubs, training events. We want people to be able to access all the capacity that you saw this evening. And so we've got packages. We can set up a custom package for you, 2 to 9 adult logins, 2 to a whole bunch of youth logins, all in one nice, neat group inside the K-12 org. They're pre-packaged for you. They're pre-set up. No individual personally identifiable information. So it's just an easy way to go if you're just not sure how long you're going to want this, or you don't have a lot of people to take care of. This is a really good set of content for you. We've been racing through a lot of this, and so we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to ask a question. And Barbara, have there been some questions that people have been asking?
Lynette and I've been busy.
And I see one of them is asking for that racial equity link again, and that's right here.
Oh,
so
awesome.
What have we got?
My fingers.
Yep.
So I'd like to group these just a little bit, Charlie. And so let's start with around accounts. We've got a number of questions surrounding accounts and, you know, what do I need? So do all students in a class need an account, or is that just the school, or is it both?
Everybody can have a login inside a school account. So the account, the license goes to the school or the club, and all the individuals in the school and club can have their own. That means they can save, they can create things and save them from one day to the next. They can modify them, they can share them, they can collaborate. But unless people can sign in, they can't save anything. So it really helps to have those. So that means this is why we want people to know about privacy. The quick answer on privacy is we want people not to use any personally identifiable information. This document walks you through how to do all that.
Perfect. Tom, I've got a question for you related to geo inquiries. We had a number of people wanting to include or use the student worksheets, and so we've shared that link with folks, and we'll continue to that'll be in their emails as well. But someone was wondering about copyright issues, and they use a particular software at their school, and we won't go down that rabbit trail, but just maybe you could talk about, are there any copyright issues related to the geo inquiries, and how much are they allowed to share or use?
Good question. Yeah, the geo inquiries are licensed under Creative Commons. So as educators, you've got full access to edit and change them as you like. So once you change the geo inquiry, you can save it on, say, a district LMS or a shared drive or something of that sort, so your kids can access it internally. I will caution everybody that if you modify a geo inquiry and you're still pointing to the original map, we may make alterations to the map that make your changes to the activity problematic. So just keep it in mind that if you're making edits and you're still hooked to our map, that you'll have to be aware of changes that are occurring. So you'd want to check the map, for example, before you use the activity next year, as an example. But yes, modify away.
Okay, great. Kylie, a question for you. They would like to know how you color code in the correct color, or maybe how do you choose specific colors for information when you're thinking about some of those forms and maybe mapping in general.
All right, sure. So in this case, it's pretty easy to tell which color I should be using when I'm asking favorite colors. And what you can do is as you're authoring, as you're authoring the map, you can actually specify what colors you want displayed for certain feature types. And so that's how I made sure that they lined up.
Excellent. And I don't remember off the top of my head, but I think if you just Google color brewer, I don't remember the link off the top of my head, but that's a great resource if you're wanting to look at cartography colors and things that are good to use if you're wanting to encourage that with students also. All right. Questions about credits, Charlie. Does analysis cost credits? What do they do?
Yes, analysis costs credits. Credits allow the account to be documented for work that is going on there or storage that is happening. And inside the Orgs for Schools document, there's a discussion about credits. Generally speaking, schools don't need to worry about credits. We want schools to be conscious of it. The people who pay for their software also pay for their credits. We want students and teachers to learn responsible behavior and recognize that, oh, oopses sometimes happen. So this is the time to learn.
Great. Tom, question for you. Someone would like to know if they can search for the NGSS standard to find the geo inquiry that is connected with it.
You know, we don't have a specific search tool that would do that, but I don't know why one couldn't use a modified Google search to make that work. The PDFs that we publish should have read accessibility turned on, so engines like Google should be able to read them. I'll look into it. So if that person wants to follow up, emailing schools@esri.com.
Yeah, and we'll share that question with you so that the two of you can get connected. And I will oh goodness, we're out of time here. But one more question. They are planning to teach a virtual GIS course, and they live in Wisconsin. And then they're asking, would the Gis Club Kit be the best option?
It's really a matter of how long and how many if this is designed to be something that might run for 3 months and then stop and be done, or they're just going to be a dozen people working on it, this is really what a club kit is for. Something short and sweet. If a club is going to be sticking around for 4 years, then by all means get a club bundle.
Okay. But for the short run, the club kit is the way to go.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And folks, we're sorry we could not get to all of these questions, but hey, you got a couple more seconds. Keep typing them in, and we will share those with the Esri team, and the Good Find folks over there will follow up with you individually. So thanks again to Charlie, Kylie, and Tom for sharing their expertise with us this evening and all their great tools. Just a reminder to keep an eye on your inbox. We will be in touch with a link to the recording as well as an attendance certificate. And we appreciate your opinions on the survey on the way out. Thanks again, everybody. We hope that you have a great evening and a successful start to your school years. And we hope to see you again at another Directions Magazine webinar. Thanks, everybody. Good night.